Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again, and I am here today to review The Flash. First off, I was not excited about this movie at all because I don't know, like, at first I was, because it might have been the real Flashpoint story with, Batman, his father, his mother. I thought that was a great story back when I first heard about it. But then they announced that wasn't what the movie was going to be. And then they announced that the writer from Birds of Prey and Bumblebee was going to be writing it. And, it just, one thing after another, it just kept on sounding more and more like a piece of crap. And it wasn't helping that it kept on getting pushed back. And then you had the whole Snyder disaster where, they just, Warner Brothers, they don't know what to do. And they could not recover from anything. It was like, they were just throwing shit at the wall and really doing a disservice to actors, directors, filmmakers, really, really bad. So, I was not excited for this movie at all. But I actually really liked this movie. I thought that it was one of the better DC movies that I've seen in a long time. It had a lot of great things about it that made me overlook the bad stuff in it, because, before I even saw this movie, there were already like thousands of people just trashing it everywhere, saying that there are these certain moments that look terrible, and, posting leaked images and, posting leaked clips and laughing in the clips like they're just, this forced cringe laughter that they do. It's all so disingenuous because they're so upset that, Snyder isn't doing any more crappy DC movies. And it really, I don't know, it just made me think, wow, this movie's gonna suck. And then I watched it and I was like, wow, this movie's pretty damn good. And all the people who trashed it were just trashing it to trash it. Because, I would have been the first person to say, this movie's a piece of trash. I mean, you guys know that I've reviewed tons of movies on the channel, given them terrible reviews, practically, destroyed them in 40 minutes or less, or even longer than that, with just random movies that nobody even cares about. Time after time, I ranted about that movie for over an hour. So, nobody can say that I'm fake and that I'm just don't even try, because I'm serious. This is a good movie. So anyways, first off, I'll just go through the things I liked and didn't like, non-spoilers. Then I will get into spoilers and give my food review. I really loved Ezra Miller. Honestly, I had to take all the real life stuff out of it. Just like when I review, I don't even want to say his name, but you know who, Mr. Fearless Vampire Killers last month. I have to take all the real life stuff out of it in order to, be a reviewer, to review objectively as much as possible. And, but I really loved him in this movie. He was really, really good. I always liked him as an actor. I really did. Stanford Prison Experiment, Californication. Anytime I saw him, I always thought, he's really, really good. He's weird, but he's really, really good. And especially in this movie, because he plays himself and then a younger version of himself. And he does a really good job at playing these multiple versions of himself. And, I know a lot of people, they thought that the younger version was extremely annoying. I didn't find him annoying at all. I just thought, that's Ezra Miller. What do you expect? It's just like, it's basically himself, but just amped up by 100. So, it's not really that different to me. And then I love the emotion. There were quite a few moments in the movie where there was real emotion that you felt, and not this fake, edgelord emotion. Like, I don't know. I don't even want to think about other DC things anymore, because it's going to make me think about how bad certain projects were and how badly that, the whole universe was treated under certain filmmakers. Well, a lot of them. A lot of them. Like, even Green Lantern, they had that scene with the race car where doesn't he like save the love interest and put her in like a Hot Wheels car or something? Like, really, really bad. And then, so there was lots of great emotion. I loved Michael Keaton as Batman. He was just as good, if not better, than he's ever been. He was perfect. He fit like a glove. He was perfect in this role. And he really cemented himself as the best Batman in this movie. And then also, surprisingly, Supergirl, I thought was incredible. I thought, she's not Henry Cavill, and she'll never be, but I could definitely imagine her alongside Henry Cavill as being, Supergirl to his Superman. And she did a really good job. I really liked her a lot. So, let's see, what else? Because there are some negative things too, and I want to get to those, obviously, because I know how much you guys like me talking about the negative stuff. Let's see. Well, the action was pretty good, but then that'll get to the negative stuff as well. The music was really good. I really liked the ending, pretty much. And yeah, it was just a pretty good movie. Like, it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't as good as it could have been, I will say. Like, there were a lot of great ideas in this movie, a lot of potentially like masterful type of ideas that could have, if they were executed well, they could have made for a perfect movie. But that being said, I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. I would highly recommend seeing it. And yeah. So now for the bad things. First off, the visuals at some points were really bad. Oh yeah, in terms of good as well, Ben Affleck as Batman was in this movie a little bit, and it was really upsetting because, like, he had the best scene in the whole movie. Like, he has this little scene, and they showed it in the trailers, and we'll talk about the trailers because that's another issue. He had this one scene where he just completely stole the show, and he gave this little speech to the Flash, and it was the greatest. It was just the best thing in the whole movie, because it really felt like that's Bruce Wayne giving this, warning and saying, like, you know what, Flash, you need to just settle down and, live your life in the present and not live in the past. That was the best scene. And then, so now negatives, finally. Well, Ben Affleck's Batman suit looked terrible. It had this weird, like, fish or net design on the front where, like, you have his bat suit and then there's, like, this netting on his bat suit. That looked terrible. And then, a huge issue for me were the villains. General Zod and Feora, they could have basically been anyone because they were hardly in the movie. When they were, they didn't really do very much except stand there and deflect attacks. Like, they were really, really piss poor villains. And it felt like such a squandered opportunity for them to bring back these characters and then have them do so little. You know, I really expected for General Zod to do a lot more and to be more of a villain and to, you know, be a character. But he was just more like a video game NPC of a villain rather than an actual villain. And then a Feora as well. I didn't even know if that was the real OG Feora because I thought, you know, it could just be anybody. They could just, you know, transplant the face, like, digitally onto some random person. Because that's what it looked like. Like, it looked terrible. Another thing was the action in the second half was lackluster. I mean, it was lackluster because it was so choppy is the best word that I can think to describe it. So, like, you'd have the Flash and the Flash over here fighting, and then you'd have Batman over here fighting, and it was almost like the characters stopped fighting so that they could wait for the other characters to fight and look at them, and then, you know, it was just very, very contrived. Like, you could tell that they reshot this a lot of times. It really wasn't fluid. It wasn't, it didn't work very well in terms of, like, a sequence altogether. It was just very, very choppy. And then, it was very fast, too. Like, a lot of this movie was the build-up to the second half. Like, a lot of it, the whole first half was just, like, setup, and then finally you get some action at the end. And I just felt like we deserved a little bit more. We definitely deserved a little bit more. And then, obviously, I already talked about the visuals. A lot of them were really bad. But it didn't really take away from the movie because at the end of the day, I really felt like the movie's heart was in the right place. I felt like, you know, a lot of the writing was really good. It's just that it could have been, all of it could have been executed better. And then another criticism would be way too many trailers. I really felt like the trailers kind of ruined this movie. You know, like, there were too many trailers showing too much of this movie. They showed way too much. And, you know, I watched them all because at first I was kind of not even interested in watching the movie. But, wow, like, the trailers just... so many trailers. And it's like, you could have had one trailer just showing Batman, showing the Flash, showing Supergirl, showing Zod, and that's it. And everyone would have seen this movie. Especially the people who wanted to go to film it so that they could leak it all over Twitter and ruin it because it's not a Snyder movie. So, yeah, and then I will say, too, I said that Michael Keaton was great, and he was. The action scenes with him were the best action scenes in the movie. But The scene where he says, "You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts," was trash. I mean, it was like the whole scene was good. And then all out of nowhere, you just had this totally contrived, terrible, like just cringe nostalgia bait moment where Michael Keaton is like, "You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts." And it's like, I'm not even saying it the way that he said it. The way he said it was even worse. And that was probably one of the worst moments of the movie, because it didn't fit at all. It was so glaring, and it was just like, that's not, that, don't do that, okay? Don't do that ever again, please. It was like watching, like, what if Michael Keaton went to a birthday party and the kid asked him to say, "You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts." Like, that's what it was like. It was that bad. I will say, too, that I thought that the ending was pretty interesting and good, because it kind of left things open. Like, a lot of people were saying that this movie was going to be where, you know, they just completely, the whole objective of the movie was erasing the Snyderverse, and it wasn't. It was to just introduce multiverses. Like, that was the whole point of this movie. So that was another surprising thing with it. And, you know, that's not really much of a spoiler. Speaking of spoilers, really quickly, I will just say George Clooney replaces Michael Keaton at the end. So basically, the whole explanation for why Michael Keaton is not Batman is because of this movie. And because George Clooney replaces him, Michael Keaton's world gets destroyed, time gets altered, and yeah. And once again, the emotion at the end was really good, where Barry sees his mom in the store and he has to take the tomato can out, thus making her die again in the time thing, in the timeline. That was probably the most emotional scene of the movie. And then trying to think if there are any other sport. Well, Supergirl dies as well in the world. So that was kind of interesting, was just how the characters in this movie, they really took beatdowns. I mean, they took superhero level beatdowns. And, you know, it wasn't just like they're like Mary Sue from Star Wars. You know, Rey, the loser, worst character ever in film history. You know, it was like they really took beatings in this movie. Like Batman, he didn't even ever defeat a Kryptonian. Like, he goes one-on-one with a Kryptonian, and literally all he does is just knock out the Kryptonian. That's all he does. So, like, that's another thing I liked about this movie, was that it really felt like if the action was executed better, it could have been really epic, and that, like, this is a really tough fight, and that's the whole point, is that they could never win this fight, and it was impossible. So in terms of food, and I am still sick, by the way, and so I think you guys probably wonder that, but I wanted to review this movie for sure. So anyways, I would give the food review of this movie would be, you know, Taco Bell sometimes comes out with these fun new menu items. Well, they do all the time, I guess. This movie, it's like, this is like a Taco Bell limited edition meal. You got Michael Keaton, which would be like a chicken quesadilla. Supergirl, she's like a big, thick, and I emphasize thick burrito, spicy burrito. The Flash, he's like 2 Doritos tacos, and then chips and cheese would be like, I don't know, all the other stuff in the movie. Ben Affleck, the music. And then to top it all off, you got a new freeze, which is like a red and yellow freeze. And they actually do have a red and yellow freeze now. It's like a raspberry lemonade freeze or something. That's what this movie is. It's like a limited edition, delicious but really bad for you Taco Bell meal. So anyways, that's what I think of The Flash. Please like this video, comment, tell me what you thought of the movie, and then please subscribe if you'd like to see more honest movie reviews. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.